So it's right at the top of the hour. I'm going to give it another minute. And I was going to ask you to put your name and where you're calling from in the chat, but if you do that now, then the people who come in after you won't see it. So we'll give it another minute. But where are you calling from? If you want to answer out loud.
I've put where I'm calling from into my name. You can do that as well.
Oh, look at that. What time is it there?
It's about 5. It's 1 minute past 5.
5 p.m.?
Yes,
Okay, that makes sense.
it's a good time.
It's a good time. Hey, Jessica. Oh, she's still connecting. So I'm going to go ahead and start since you all were on time and I want to honor that. So I'm going to share my screen. And if you were here for the 1 hour preview workshop series, Attunement, which is number 2 you were in the right place. So now go ahead and excuse me, go ahead and put your name and where you're calling from in the chat, if you don't mind. We are recording and we often will post the recording on the website. So we wanted to give you a heads up about that. And we'll also add you to our mailing list. At this point, we're doing about 1 to 3 emails a month. If you would rather not receive those, let Pedro know. No, thank you. Hell no. Keep me off your list, whatever you want to say. Pedro, can you raise your hand and say hello so folks know who you are? There's
Hi
Pedro.
everyone, Pedro here.
And so there will be an exercise or two, and for those exercises, we will put you in breakout rooms, which will not be recorded. If you would rather not be in a breakout room, please, please, please tell Pedro so that nobody's left alone. Like we don't put you in a breakout room, but you're not there, and then we have to kind of figure out what to do with that other person. Uh, we will give an overview of the Mendful platform. There's a lot of information, but I'm going to go through it pretty quickly because I want to be able to get to the exercises, which people tell us are their favorite part of what we're doing. However, we will send out the link to this deck after the workshop is over, so you can go back over some of that stuff in more detail or look on our website for even more details. Uh, we'll also tell you how today's workshop fits in with the other 3 workshops, and then we'll ask you for an evaluation. It'll only take 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll do it right here as part of what we're doing. And then we will officially end. But after that official ending, I will stay on for any Q&A or thoughts about what we just went over. And I'll also talk about the upcoming Mendful Core Competencies training in October, of which this is a preview. So if you're in the breakout room, just a quick nod to logistics here. If anything, if your partner doesn't show up and you're all by yourself, or if anything seems off or strange, Pedro is also the bouncer here. If anyone's giving you trouble, you can do any of these things. You can ask for help, or you can return to the main session and we will help you. So let's talk about the Mendful app or platform. So Mendful is the first platform that we know of offering human-led conflict resolution on demand. Later, we will weave in some AI help, but humans are really at the center of what we're doing. And the purpose of the app is to guide folks who engage it from moments of conflict into reconnection, helping to prevent ongoing stress, estrangement, and all the other kinds of things that can happen when we don't resolve conflict quickly. We're also passionate about providing right livelihood opportunities for coaches who go through the training to be able to work on the platform. And if you're just arriving, please go ahead and put your name and where you're calling from in the chat and welcome. So the problem that we're solving is that the current options that we have fall short when it comes to interpersonal conflict resolution in the moment. It's 9:30 on a Sunday night. You just got some bad news. Your relative is implicated. What do you do? Therapy takes time and it may not resolve the conflict. Legal mediation is costly and divisive, and you also have to wait for the appointment. And AI only solutions can glitch, can fail to attune to what's happening and just not work. So our solution to this is Mendful, which provides help right as the conflict is occurring. Just like you can call a rideshare or order food or turn on Netflix, you can also get conflict resolution. When I say it out loud like that, it seems kind of obvious to me. Like in this polarized world, why would we not have on-demand conflict resolution? Seems like it's months or years or centuries overdue. I know that's silly, centuries, because we haven't had digital, the digital world is quite new. But basically, it's real time, anytime from any device for almost any type of conflict that therapy or legal mediation or AI might not be able to address. Here are some early screens showing what it will eventually look like. You can talk to a human coach, you can talk to the AI coach, and you can browse a library of videos. And that's something that's been a passion of mine for a long time, to be able to see people in similar conflicts, resolving them, to get a sense of what's possible, and also to share it with someone, because maybe that someone doesn't want to go face to face with you because it can be confronting, but they might take a look at somebody else's similar conflict and soften. People within the platform eventually, we hope, will find their niche. For example, these are fictional characters. I'm real, of course, but Jamal is a friendship whisperer, and he's been so for most of his life. And so his specialty is friendship tending. Michael works with men in men's groups, and he helps men to reconnect with their hearts. Sandra is dialed into the immigrant experience and helps Asian moms and daughters connect across generational and cultural gaps. So this is the type of thing that we hope people will eventually be able to expand as they're working on the platform. And if you drill into somebody's bio, you can see more about them. You can see all of their assets on the site, like blog posts, any recorded sessions, and feedback. Mendful's category defining right now, there's nothing exactly like it for real-time human forward conflict resolution. Mendful checks all the boxes that these other solutions don't. And for those of you who don't know, a peer support warm line is a place where you can get humans right away. You probably know that a hotline is for crises, like if you're in danger to yourself or someone else. A warm line is something that people can call if you're just having a bad day. So you do get immediate access to support, but you don't get all of these other things. Any questions about anything so far about Mendful before we go on? By the way, if you have a question for me, um, please say it out loud. I can't see the chat while I'm presenting. So let's talk a little bit about the Mendful training. So the Mendful training, and I'll talk about why when I talk about my personal journey. The basis of it is self in relation to self skills. And that means, how do we relate to our own feelings, basically? And we'll have an exercise about that later, because that has everything to do with how we then relate to others. So we use those skills that we learn about relating to ourselves and our own feelings to relate to others. And that forms the foundation for the Mendful conflict resolution coaching skills. That's a very high level overview of the approach. Other techniques, we use nonviolent communication based on Marshall Rosenberg's work, along with decolonizing nonviolent communication. Um, and then we blend that with a multidimensional approach that encompasses body, mind, spirit, and emotions to help people quickly get to the heart of their conflict, unlike traditional slow therapy or legal adjacent mediation. When I say quickly, I don't mean that we rush people in any way, shape, or form, but rather that when we learn how to get to the heart of what's going on, we slow down people's stories, people's blame, people's judgment, and we find out what's actually underneath, that the conflict itself can resolve very quickly in an organic sort of way. I don't know if you've ever seen kids, crying or screaming, and then they kind of dust themselves off, and then a second later, they're back to playing. Well, that's our vision for what's possible for adults as well, once we kind of get to the heart of the matter. We aim for cultural relevance. We know that one size doesn't fit all demographics. And we've designed the training itself to be a personal growth experience for the people who are taking the training. And then the last thing I want to say is that the training is very collaborative. And that means that not just the training, but the as we're building the platform itself, there's a lot of sharing best practices, um, working together to make this happen. In the training itself, we comment on each other's work, we elevate each other so that we create something bigger than the sum of its parts. Any questions about that before we go on to attunement? And again, I know I went through that really quickly, but you can we'll have time for Q&A after it's officially over, and we'll also give you the deck to peruse at your leisure. Let's talk about attunement. So one of the things I want to say is that this is not some sort of special esoteric skill, but that different versions of attunement are how we are hardwired as humans. This is what enables us to, like the little kids that I mentioned, to naturally resolve conflicts and support each other in processing emotions. And if you look around, you can see this in children, just how we show up with each other. Unfortunately, in this culture, conditioning by gender and other things can teach us to distrust and dismiss our innate ways of knowing what's going on inside us. Don't cry, be a big boy, be a big girl. Very well intentioned, but can cause us to split off from what's happening inside us. Very common. So I want to give a little bit of background on how I got here. I need to stop this and stop the share for a moment so I can look at my notes and check the time. So around 2013, I founded a somatic or body-based counseling practice called Wisdom of the Body. And a lot of the Mendful training comes from that work. I just lost my window. And part of the reason that I founded Wisdom of the Body was one thing was a question. Where can an adult go to get sustained, aware, non-sexual physical contact in a therapeutic context? And there are approaches like Hakomi and other approaches that answer that question, but there's a particular way that I wanted to show up with clients. And it turns out that when you do that work, you kind of have to be clear about what's going on in your own mind and body because it's very sensitive to show up for another person that way. And myself, when I had gone to therapists and other practitioners in the past, I often found that when I was getting to some kind of deep place inside myself, that the practitioner would apparently become anxious. And then in order to manage their anxiety, would start to do their modality to me, on me, at me. And that stopped my process in its tracks. So I designed the wisdom of the body practice first to cultivate spaciousness within myself, and so I could provide a field of love and acceptance for whatever was needed to rise, whatever needed to rise within my clients. And in that way, that practice was truly attuned to them, which is especially important if you're working with physical contact, rather than me trying to impose my modality grid over their emotional landscape or running a pattern. And we're going to talk about patterns in a little bit. And so during Wisdom of the Body's tenure, I also created a 9-month personal growth and transformation focused program called the Immersion. And guess what? One of our foundational practices was conflict resolution. Students would bring in real life situations with friends and family, and we do do-overs because, not so surprising, conflict with others is where some of our most challenging emotional issues show up. So we'd use those staged do-overs to gently unravel whatever was inside that person that was bolstering the polarization that held the conflict in place, help them return to their heart and invite the other person to do the same. And again, starting with my nonviolent communication training in 2009, I've seen that from that place, solutions unfold organically. And so with the Mendful training, we're kind of doing that in reverse. We're putting the conflict resolution first, and then we're learning all the things that support two people in conflict to come back to their hearts and reconnect. So that's kind of my personal lineage story of how I got here. Let me go back to sharing. Oops. Any questions about that before I keep going?
No questions, but I love your passion and I feel I resonate a lot in terms of what I've been doing. So thank you.
Oh, lovely. I'd love to hear more. Live chat. So here is our first invitation, and I'll do a demo of it. And it's a look backwards. And again, this is optional. It is an invitation. And I'll go over the questions and then I'll do them myself. And Kirsten, would you like to witness me while I do them?
Yes, sure.
Okay, not yet, but but after I'm done going through them, then I'll ask Pedro to put you and me in the spotlight and I'll do the exercise myself as a demo and then we'll break out for those who wish to.
All my role is basically to be holding
Just
space, being
yeah, just to
present.
listen. Yeah.
Yes, sure.
So I have somebody to talk to, so I'm not sort of just talking
Of
to the
course.
room. So the invitation is to look back and recall when you were a child, how were your expressions of quote unquote negative feelings treated? And what, if any kind of attunement or not, did you receive? So there's really four parts to it, to look back at how your feelings were treated. The second one is how has this impacted how you have attuned or not to your own feelings? And how has this impacted how you have attuned or not to others' feelings? And how has that changed over time? So what happened? How did it impact you and how has that changed? So, Pedro, can you put me and Kirsten in the spotlight and I'll do the exercise?
Done.
Great. So when I was a child, I got ridiculed if I cried, basically. And I can't remember how many times I was told, if you want to cry, go to your room. And I remember my father taunting me, little baby Jill, like if I was ridiculed basically for crying. And that made me kind of macho. And it also made me, I remember turning around and ridiculing my best friend. Now I feel really bad about that when she was crying.
Mm,
And I pretended that nothing bothered me because it wasn't okay to have those kinds of feelings.
mm,
And I stuffed a lot. Over time, when I got into reevaluation counseling in my early 20s, thank goodness, because I was having like depression and anxiety sandwiches, I called them, like I would vacillate. And when I got into reevaluation counseling, which is a cathartic process, it was all about recovering that same natural healing process that I had stuffed. And once I started to do that and it was able to contact, grief and sadness and anger and um, that leveled out that depression and anxiety. I cried away headaches. It was just so nice to be able to feel fully human after having like sequestered that part of myself away. Thank
mm.
goodness, because then I wound up being able to learn how to listen to others, which kind of went hand in hand with learning how to listen to myself.
One, shall I also ask the questions there? Because
If
it
you
also,
if you'd like,
yeah.
yeah, clarifying question or deepening, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could reflect, of course, what you've said, but there's
Sure.
also
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm hearing is that there was a lot of ridicule around crying, in particular from your father, and how it led you to basically push down that part of yourself. You said you became macho, even to the point where you were ridiculing other people for their emotions, maybe their sadness. So it was, yeah. Um, and then you also described your some of your journey since then, actually being able to reclaim those feelings and uh, yeah, resolve physical pain with that as well.
Yeah, that was a nice plus.
Mm,
So I know that this is an ask for a vulnerable activity. There's no pressure here. If you would rather not go into a breakout room and do this with someone you just probably met, let Pedro know and he will not put you into a breakout room. And for the rest of you, we're going to go and have about 5 minutes each. let's say actually 4 minutes each. I want to make sure we have enough time. Take turns. We'll let you know when it's time to switch. And again, and Pedro, if you can put, you can either screenshot this invitation and use it, or Pedro will also put a link to these instructions in the chat so you can open that up in a second screen while you're doing the exercise. And it's basically when you were young, how were your expressions of negative feelings treated? How has that impacted how you have attuned or not to your own feelings? How have you attuned or not to others' feelings? And how's that changed over time?
Could you say again how long we'll be in the breakout rooms?
8 minutes, and take
Okay.
4 minutes each to share and listen to each other. But while you're listening, please just listen and don't say, oh, yeah, that same thing happened to me. Let me tell you about it. Just really listen and give the person that time, because then you'll have your time. All right. So, how was that? Does anyone want to share?
Thank you. That was, I really enjoyed the connection.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share before we go on? So, the next thing I want to talk about has to do with our patterns of what happens to our nervous system when a stimulus hits it. These, we could be born with them, we could have adopted them to survive less than optimal conditions. We don't really know exactly how we arrive at these. And if you've raised kids, you know that sometimes it seems like our kids are born with these essential kind of ways of responding to the world. So this work has roots in Neo-Reichian character structure for those of you who like to geek out about this sort of thing. And I'll show more about the lineage as I go, but uh, I also work in the training with a book by Stephen Kessler called The Five Personality Patterns, which is essentially a distillation of Linda Cicera's work, which also goes back to the Neo-Reichian work. Let me continue so that this will all make some sense. Second. So we just did the first exercise. So here are I hate to call them personality patterns because it doesn't seem exactly like personality to me, even though that's the title of the book we use, reaction or attention patterns. And the first one is the antenna. These are names that we use, and it has to do with our attention kind of going up and out of our body. Ask me how I know about this one. And the person who's running this pattern may be very good at artistic or philosophical or kind of in the ether types of things, but maybe have a hard time kind of being in the here and now. And something hits something hits their nervous system, their attention may fragment. The connector pattern references the other person, maybe people pleasing. You might notice these will roughly map onto fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, but not exactly. But the connector pattern wants to connect and is good at it, but also might forget about themselves in the process. So their attention goes to the other person or other people. And these are, gross oversimplifications to give you a high level overview. A person running the mountain pattern, their energy goes down into the ground, and they might be the person in the room that helps everybody feel grounded just by them being there. They don't seem to be easily rattled, though there might be an awful lot going inside. And they might not be good at setting their own boundaries. The warrior pattern, you see this a lot in superheroes, and in people running countries and so on. Their tension goes up and out, and they often go right into other people's space or disregard other people's boundaries. You know, towns and countries and groups can have patterns, cultures can have patterns. This one kind of goes up and out and wants to take what it wants. The orderer pattern, these also have original names, which are not as nice, and the orderers is rigid. relates to the structure or the rules. Their nervous system is soothed when they have a specific problem to solve, and they might not really like the messiness of life. Probably won't find them finger painting. So these are the basic patterns. The connector pattern also has a version called protected connector, where they sort of pretend that they don't um, have the experience of the raw needs that they have, kind of like I was talking about when I was a kid. So let's take a look at the names that they go by, and this is, for the geek in you, if that exists, but also to orient you if you've are familiar with any of these other traditions or bodies of work. So I mentioned the character structures. The warrior also goes by the name of psychopath. In Stephen Kessler's book, it's called aggressive. The neuroscience response might be fight. For the antenna pattern, the Neo-Reiki name is schizoid. Stephen Kessler calls it leaving. It could be flight or freeze in the fight, flight, freeze model. The connector pattern in the Neo-Reichian framework is oral. Stephen Kessler calls it merging. Um, in the fight, flight, freeze could be fawn, tendon, befriend, or flop. And the order is called rigid in both of these traditions, and I don't think it maps onto that fight, flight, or freeze model. And then the mountain pattern is called masochist in Neo-Reichian tradition, and Stephen Kessler calls it enduring, and it might be freeze or flop here. So, like I said, it doesn't map exactly onto those, but I wanted to give you this in case these are meaningful to you or help you make sense of it. So before we go and take a deep dive into one of the patterns and then play around with it in an exercise, any questions about this body of work?
Curious about the order and the rigid, whether it's like a combination of freeze and fight, because it's like fighting to stay in pattern or fighting to hold things the way they are. I just have curiosity about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't run that pattern, although I've been very close to people who do. It doesn't seem like a fight to me so much as a more of a freezing. But interestingly, we're about to go deeper into that very pattern, so maybe that will
Yeah,
help.
actually think it might be a flight. It might not because it doesn't look like it, but it's like by trying to order and keep something, you are essentially trying to avoid something that you're afraid of.
Yeah, so you're also going very closely into the thing that you're relating to, is what I've noticed.
Yeah.
Librarians really know where to find things. Accountants really know what's going on with your numbers, right?
Mm.
So yes, there's yeah, hyper focus on one thing to the exclusion of other things, which we're always doing as humans. But I love that you brought this up because we're just about to go into that very pattern. So the orderer pattern developed in response, often develops in response to a childhood where survival meant following rules. And those folks who are running this pattern tend to act appropriately rather than authentically, doing well in roles like librarians or accountants. However, they might feel some kind of internal emptiness as that desire for just the kind of human chaos, creativity that can be messy doesn't get to be expressed. And if they can find the safety to places where they can let loose and unlock a sense of freedom and delight, that can help to relax the hold of the pattern. Here's some folks you might recognize from popular culture. Anyone look familiar there? Hermione from Harry Potter, Okoye Black from Black Panther, Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, Chidi from The Good Place. Is it Gail from The Hunger Games or Christine? I didn't even know I had to go looking. And Christina from Grey's Anatomy. Anybody ring a bell there? It helps, it can help in screenwriting to decide which character, which pattern your character is running, because then you create the conflict that drives the story forward. So in kind of an overview of if you want to attune you're working with somebody who's running this pattern, you want to attune to them, some things to know are that what helps to soothe their system is to know everything's place in an ordered universe, what goes where. And this is not at all to judge or pathologize them, but quite the opposite. When we notice that somebody's running a pattern, we can attune to them by meeting them where they are in that pattern. They might be fearing what's outside the box, losing their mental capacity or connection to logic. It's pretty easy for them to work inside established systems or schemas and to follow rules. It might be challenging to be given something open-ended that relies on pure creativity or to reckon with the chaos of emotions. What upsets them is going outside the constructs, especially if that's what was agreed upon. Not that that's not upsetting for most people, but it might be even especially upsetting for them. And what they tend to do is to dig in their heels and become more rational and blame other people. And so their healing path in life is to be able to trust themselves and others and navigating the messy rhythms of life. And a doorway in, a way to engage them without triggering all of the pattern responses, they give them a problem to solve. Oops. I can't see because this thing is in the way. I can't see what's at the bottom. Hang on. Ah, yeah, that was it. Okay, good. So here's the invitation right now. Pedro, can you give me a time check? I can't see my time.
Yeah, it's 9:41.
Perfect. That's exactly what time I thought it was. All right, so let's do an exercise where we practice attuning to the needs of the order or pattern. So think about an interaction, public or private, where you noticed somebody running this pattern. We'll give you a situation if you can't think of one, so don't worry. Um, what was the situation? So here's an example situation. You just pulled into a parking spot and then someone approaches you and says they had their turn signal on already before you pulled in and they are unhappy about it and they're letting you know. So the reason I picked that one is that that's something that might upset anyone, but somebody running the order or pattern might be even more adamant about it. And even if that's not the predominant pattern that someone runs, we all, I mean, this is the human experience and we all run some manner of these in some circumstances. So you just parked your car and somebody else comes up to you and says, I had my turn signal on. I was waiting for that spot for almost 3 minutes and you just pulled right in. Replay what might have happened if you brought attunement to the pattern and the human expressing that pattern instead of, say, being defensive. Like if you were doing a conflict resolution session between the two people, one of whom had their turn signal on, the other of whom parked, how might you attune to that person who really wanted the person parking to know that they had their turn signal on? So I'll do a quick demo. Um, Chad, do you want to come join me?
I'll give it a try.
All right. Do you want to be the person who's really riled up because you had your turn signal on? I'm going to try to attune to your pattern.
Okay.
All
Yeah,
right,
give
go
me a
ahead.
couple of breaths to read here, and connect to the role play.
Yeah.
So the person who's upset is the person who feels like their parking spot was taken from them. Am I following
Yeah.
that?
So you
Yeah.
had your turn signal on and you were waiting there for a good couple
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
And then I just pulled right in front of you. And now you're coming over to tell me what I've done wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was sitting here for at least 2 minutes with my turn signal on. All these parking spots are taken up around me. This is the only spot available. And I just spent 2 minutes with my turn signal on, and you completely ignored me and stepped in. So I had a turn signal on. You didn't have a turn signal on. Can you move so I can have this parking spot?
Well, so you had your turn signal on, you were waiting all that time. So what I'm
Yeah.
doing, I'm referencing the rules that they were snapping to. I'm not getting defensive. I'm not going, well, I didn't see you. I just saw the place. turn signal, schmurn signal. I saw the parking lot. No, so you had your turn signal on. You were waiting all that time. And then I just pulled in right in front of you. Wow. Thank you so much for telling me. No, I hadn't seen your turn signal. If I had seen that turn signal and I would have just driven right past you, I am so sorry. Shall I back out?
That would be my preference, yes.
Okay. So what happened? What just happened there? What did I do? Anyone feel free to jump in.
You affirmed where they were coming from. You
Hmm.
reflected them back accurately. Um, and you even offered that you like comply or whatever to call it with their request, that you fulfill their request of can you please move out of the parking spot.
Yeah, yeah, and because of this particular pattern, because this person was referencing the rules, that was the thing that I immediately reflected back. If they had come out with disappointment, for example, if that had been their primary thing, like if it had been a breach of trust, I would have said, "Oh wow, you were really trusting that you could have that spot." Like I would have tried to tune into something else, but because they were referencing the rules and the structure, I did that right back to them. So let's go ahead and break into groups. If you have a different situation where somebody was running this pattern that you want to play with, go ahead and use that. But otherwise, just take 3 minutes each, and one of you be the person running the rigid pattern, either parking the car or some other, or trying to park the car with their turn signal on, or some other situation if you prefer to use that. And then switch and get a chance to practice tuning into the rigid pattern. And again, please let Pedro know now if you would, if you don't want to be put into a breakout room.
Come back, everyone.
Thank you. So how was that?
I think I would have wanted more time.
Yeah, good to know. Other folks, other feedback?
I'd say Maya and I did not feel rushed, but it was by only doing one scenario and then debriefing from it instead of trying to squeeze two in.
Mm,
So
mm.
that's feedback.
Good to know. Good to know. I had an insight. I was thinking of a situation many years ago where I lived across the street from a neighborhood pool, and I knew that the rule was to shower before you go to the pool, but I showered at home because I was just walking across the street. And a woman who was there said to me as I was getting into the pool, "You need to shower before you get into the pool." And I said, "Oh, I know. I showered at home." And then she said to me, "The rule is you need to use the shower that's here." And I felt humiliated and irritated. And I just thought, so I went over and I turned the shower on. I thought, I'm wasting water because I just showered. And like, does she not believe me? So I just went and ran the water over myself and then went into the pool. But I was just like, "Arr." And I didn't think at that time to try to relate to her rule boundedness. It just seemed easier to follow the rule that as she understood it rather than the spirit of the law, which is I just showered. So we have 5 more minutes. And I want to, wait a minute, let me just make sure I know where I am. So the question that I wanted to pose here is actually written down, so I will share my screen. And it's not a rhetorical question, it's a sincere question, but we don't have to answer it here. I just want to sort of seed the field with this question. If we knew what our own patterns were and how to come out of them into our best version of presence, how might that impact our quality of attunement to others? And then the second question is, if we could tell what pattern somebody else was expressing and what that pattern needed to relax so the person could come more into presence and feel safer to open up, how might that impact the quality of our relating or our practice if we have any kind of helping profession practice? So if we knew what our own patterns were, how might that impact our quality of attunement to others? And if we could tell what patterns someone else was running, how might we be better able to attune to them, essentially? And again, not to say there's an easy answer here, but to just throw it out there for thinking about. So let's do a quick evaluation. Just take a couple minutes, and then we'll officially end, but I'm going to stay on for a little while to answer any questions and to talk about the rest of the training. So Pedro is going to put the link to the evaluation in the chat. And while you're doing that, just wanted you to know, orient you, this is session number 2 of 4 intro sessions. We invite you to come to the rest. You can use the code Mendful Guest to register as our guest. The first one is an overview of our approach. All 3 of them are interactive except for the last one, which is more didactic. So I'm going to be quiet and let you fill out your evaluation. So I'm going to go ahead and wind up, and you can keep writing or finish them later, whatever you want. We already talked about where we are here. For our next step, you could take another one of the 1-hour workshops. You can learn more about the training. And Pedro, if you could put the link to the training page in the chat, you can apply for the October remote training. I'll give more details about that in a moment. But we're at time right now, so I want to officially end and say thank you so much for joining and playing with us, working and playing with us today. And it's fine if you're off camera or on camera, however, whatever level of participation is completely fine. I should have said that at the beginning. Somebody asked if they could be off camera. I am going to stay on for up to 15 or 20 minutes longer to answer any questions, geek out, go deeper into things, and talk a little bit about the training itself. So I want to officially, since it is the top of the hour, say thanks for coming, and you are free to go to whatever else you want or need to go to. And I'm going to stay on. Thanks, everyone. So the logistics of the training, we just finished training the very first cohort of Mendful conflict resolution coaches, ending near the beginning of May. And those folks are now getting ready to staff the app as associate coaches for our soft launch later this month. So we're super excited about that. 13 of them. We have another training coming up starting mid-October. All trainings consist of 3 long weekends, about 3 months apart, and the weekends are Friday through Monday. And for any type of training that we do, this one or future ones, you work in pods of 4. Somebody gets to be a practice coach with 2 people enacting a conflict, and the 4th person is the support coach who keeps you on track. And you need about 5 hours a week to do this practice, comment on other people's videos, and do the readings. And again, we're soft launching the app this month. So by the time the October cohort is done in January 2027, we should have the platform more built out and more paying positions ready to be occupied, although we cannot guarantee because we do not know what the market will bear. And again, the details are at mendful.world/training. And so that's it for all I have to say about any of that. And I'm open for discussion, questions, geeking out. Anybody got any jokes? And
Thank
now
you.
I can go ahead.
Thank you for running this. I can see that there's a lot of passion in it.
Thank you. And now I can see the chat. So if you prefer to put something in the chat, now I can read it.
Jill, I'm curious about connecting or how you connect or what you see as this as being a pathway to connecting to needs. So like on the other side of this, like what's the need that the person who's trying to park has? What's the, from an NVC standpoint, that this feels like a pathway toward uh opening. toward needs. And I'm just
Yeah.
curious if that's how you see it and how it fits, how that does
Ah,
or doesn't fit into the structure.
what a great question. I guess I see the patterns as a kind of ingrained strategy layer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's needs below the strategy, right? Every strategy is to try and meet a need. So does this open the door to designing toward needs?
Yeah.
I
As
mean,
I'm
I could
sure.
have several guesses. Like, for example, the person might be running late for something as well, and they were waiting. So they have a strong need maybe to uphold their commitment to be in a particular place at a particular time, kind of maintaining also like their own integrity, something about respect for other people. Whether that's a need we can discuss, but yeah, one possibility we don't know.
Yeah, and in a public situation, as I'm sure you well know, if you tried to do NVC with strangers, they might get weirded out if you say, "Are you having a need for respect right now?" What are you talking about? You're in my parking place. Um, so it's sort of like an interim layer, I would say, of working with the strategy that people are resonating with because of their survival patterns. And of course, underneath any survival pattern is a need for safety, for belonging, for acceptance, and so on. I really appreciate that question, Chad, because I never thought about it in that way. I'm kind of a little surprised that I never thought about it in that way. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm taking it out of context of the parking and into the context of a mindful, someone holding space as a mindful coach.
When I've worked with rigid pattern before, um, I've sometimes seen a resistance to to dropping into needs and a real like an attachment to making the other person wrong and trying to get everybody to agree that that person was really wrong. Even with quote unquote self-aware people.
Yeah. Yeah. The question that I would ask is, what would you have if the other person was right?
Can you
Or
say
what?
more about that? I got a
Just
little
like
confused.
instead of saying the person's wrong, what would the person do to be right?
Which person?
Just yeah,
Oh, 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 you mean
I'm thinking about pathways to working with me in the scenario that we played with. That person did something wrong. Okay, what would have been right?
oh,
And
like what
what
would you
and
have wanted to happen instead?
yeah, and then what would you have had if that person did that
Oh,
Hmm.
beautiful.
That's a
Yeah.
way to
to
identifying your
get to the
need.
need? Hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. I'm gonna copy that trick.
Yeah. I'm also curious in terms of working with the app. Ideally, if there is a conflict, both people are up for engaging with this,
Right.
but they might not be. It might just be one of the parties. So yeah.
So what are the situations like? How do we handle that? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I guess I'm also reflecting on like if somebody is deeply in that pattern of feeling rigid, are
Hmm.
they going to reach out for support?
They might, if nothing else, to help the other person see how they're wrong.
Yeah, for sure. That might be their motivation, which we might not share, but yes.
And that's why I hesitate to call them personality patterns because, people's capacity for self-examination, it doesn't, they say nothing about their capacity for self-examination, their sense of humor, their trustworthiness or reliability, that kind of thing. To me, those things seem more like personality, whereas the patterns seem more um, like a physical or somatic reaction, like what happens to our nervous system,
The
regardless of what
subconscious.
other attributes we might have. But Kirsten, even though you didn't ask it directly, I'm happy to address the use case, if you will, of one person being willing and the other not
Hmm.
in terms of mental. So one thing is that right now we're launching our our first version with off-the-shelf tools, meaning Zoom calls and Google Calendar instead of and Wix tools instead of building something dedicated because we still need to see how it's all going to work. And we expect that we'll have plenty of scenarios where just one person is having a conflict and the other person is not willing to come. And so we'll offer them one-on-one coaching. We'll also um, have a mechanism for inviting them in. And ultimately, we will have a library of videos where people who don't want to show up for a conflict resolution session can still watch a video of something similar to their own conflict. Eventually, we'll have that many, you know. An example I've given before is, let's say a gay son has come out to his conservative, very religious father, and it just hasn't gone well. So the son reaches out to dad through Mendful, and dad says, I'm not going to do this woke thing, and it just doesn't want to come face to face like that. But dad will be willing to anonymously view a video of a different gay son coming out to his different conservative religious father and get a vicarious sense of being heard and also of being able to hear his son. And we hope that that will impact the relationship and also make dad think about engaging Mendful if he's having a conflict with his coworker or his wife or his brother.
So there's an idea of somehow being able to provide meaningful resources for the situation that the person or people are coming with, something like that.
Yeah, even if they're not ready, willing, or able to show up face to face, which can be confronting.
Yeah. Actually, while I just realized while we were doing this call, I was folding my booklet, which has this title.
Oh my God, I love it. When we
Yeah.
cannot get through to each other, it's rarely because we don't care. None of us were taught how to stay curious when relationships become difficult. Most of us, I love the tenderness of that. It's so true. It makes me want to
Yeah.
cry.
So
If
yeah,
you have
I have a
struggled, welcome. Beautiful.
yeah. So that's what I was folding as. So yeah.
I'd love to see it. And do you have it in digital form?
I do. I do. I mean, uh, I do.
Is it okay to share?
I can share. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm happy to share the screen. It's a bit difficult because it's like a booklet and it's on an A4 page, so part of the pages are upside down. But I can share my screen if
Oh, I
I
didn't
don't know if
mean right
I'm
now, but
able.
right now is fine too.
I am able
I
apparently
meant,
to
would you
share my
share it
screen.
with me? Oh,
I
look at
can. I'm
that.
happy to share it with you. Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah. So, but so it's awkward to read if it's not in paper form because half of it is upside down.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
When we cannot get through to each other, I just love that you went right to the heart of it. When we cannot get through to each other, it's rarely because we don't care. It's like if we didn't care, we wouldn't be so upset by the thing, right?
Yeah, so and then I've written a dialogue that's based on well something that essentially happened to me but stripped out the
Yeah.
well a lot of the context and content and kept the heart of the issue and so yeah I'm happy to share that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Are we still recording?
Yeah,
Oh,
we are.
good. Okay.
Yeah, I'm also curious about like I saw that the price is currently set at $33. I think I'm assuming it was dollars. I actually didn't pay attention to the
Oh,
currency, but
so
um
that was from a while ago, 333 a minute. Because the way that that came to me was that I saw that psychic services go up to as much as $20 a minute. That's $1,200 an hour. And I thought, well, surely conflict resolution is at least important, so we could charge 200 an hour, especially because we're going to be helping people get through things quickly. However, we now have more than 50 people who've taken this initial survey, and they are indicating that the price point that they're willing to pay would be much lower. And so my thought is that once we prove our concept, once we show people that we can get through, see if our hypothesis is correct, that we can help people get through things quickly, and the demand rises, then we'll be able to charge more. But for a launch, We want to make it and since people aren't familiar with Mendful at all, they don't know what it is. Like, what is it therapy? Is it mediation? They're not going to know. We want to keep the price point low enough that it won't be a barrier to actually getting some traction. So initially, we're going with $60 an hour for senior coaches and 40 for associate coaches.
Mm,
And we hope that that will evolve over time.
yeah, that's good. I mean, I'm in pounds, so that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, these are US dollars.
Yeah.
And we do the hours of the training would be or have been rough for folks overseas. However, I know there are like a couple people in the UK we're talking about creating a different training solely for UK, and I would work with your hours, you know. I mean, I don't want to be up at 3 in the morning, but we figure out something, you know.
Well, your morning, our afternoon,
Yeah.
like
We
now.
yeah, we figure out something that could work. So, if it turns out that that's something you're interested in, I can put you in touch with those folks.
Yeah, I am interested in it. I guess the thing that I am personally looking at and concerned about is cost factor in some ways, because like I do recognize that, you're putting in a lot, and that there is something in terms of, like, money is part of what really helps you continue the work that you're doing. And at the same time, I'm aware I don't have a lot of access to financial resources right now. So there's
Yeah.
there's that consideration for me. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want finances to be a barrier for anyone. And yes, we also do need to live and continue because our company's not funded yet. That said, um, I've also been looking into grants to bring the training to different places in the world. So that's another possibility. We haven't
Hmm.
gotten there yet, but I'm in conversation with some folks in Indonesia about bringing training there and to some conflict resolution professionals in Nigeria. Indonesia is a lot closer to Nigeria than the US is. So, yeah.
I'm curious also what I don't know what kind of feedback you've had, because obviously, I mean, you're in some ways preaching to the choir here, because we've come and we're interested, and in some ways we might already be doing part of the work that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Like I've done nonviolent communication. Chad obviously knows about nonviolent communication. I'm a counselor as well. So, and I've done a lot of my own work, kind of, doing things like this, and I couldn't be doing that if I hadn't done well engaged with what's coming up in me and how I'm responding to things. Um, but I'm curious what responses from other people are in terms of, let's say, more end user or funders, or yeah, I'm curious how you've
End
experienced
user or what?
funder, like people who might be interested in saying like, oh yeah, I think this is a good idea that needs to be supported.
Oh, a funder. So investors,
Yeah.
the main thing from investors is they want to see traction. Like they want to see that customers are coming and paying, and we're not quite there yet. I thought
Mm.
you were going to ask, will this training be redundant for someone as well versed as I am in the emotional literacy, which is another question I can answer too if you want.
I mean, I'm not really that interested in that. I don't think that the training is going to be redundant, because I think there's always something to learn when I'm engaging with a particular group of people. And I don't think I'm ever going to be done learning. So I don't like, and I think there's still something also to be done in terms of really, you want to provide a certain quality of service. And so to have some kind of alignment of,
Mhm.
like shared understandings about things is, I think, always going to be needed and useful. So yeah, so I'm answering that question myself.
Yeah, and I can take it a little bit further, which is that the spine of the practice is nonviolent communication mediation, which is different from nonviolent communication. It's
Which is fine, because that's
yeah.
also what I've done. But yes,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's I was I was worried at first because there are most of the people, or at least half in this last cohort, are already conflict resolution professionals. There's a guy with 30 years in NVC. There's a Fulbright scholar. There are people with advanced degrees in conflict resolution. So I was a little bit like, like I was afraid that I would be boring people or talking down to them. That's not the case. Um, folks did not come up to the level of efficacy with this that I wanted towards the end. And that was actually encouraging, sounds like a funny word, but it's hard. It's hard to get
Yeah,
this process of pulling people by the ears, as Marshall
yeah,
Rosenberg says, because we want part of our brand promise, if you will, with Mendful is that we want to get people on and off the app quickly. And that means not rushing them again in any way, shape, or form, but rather hang on a second. I heard you say that your feelings were hurt a moment ago before they, of course, rush off to tell the rest of the story. Can you tell me more about that thing? Then they start to cry. Then they say, well, yeah. And then you get to the heart of it. And so that process of getting to the heart and making the space friendly enough for them to
yeah,
take the risk of saying what was actually hurtful in that moment instead of blustering on about how they were wrong or going into all the details. Because as you well know from this work, people will talk around the thing, right? Rather than do the hard work of being vulnerable. And so the more that we can make ourselves into this warm, soft bed for them to just flop and relax to be vulnerable and for the heart of the matter to emerge, the faster they will resolve their conflict.
well, and I heard you say that there's two qualities. There's the quality of the soft, warm bed, but there's also the quality of being really attentive to, and in some ways, actually very precise about that thing that you just said. Can you
Yeah,
tell me a bit more about that? And
exactly. Yeah. So,
understanding, like having somewhat of an internal map as the coach of seeing, okay, where do we need to go? Kind of, yeah,
yeah, you're
yeah,
right. There is a tension or an apparent contradiction there, or two attributes of different flavored qualities or something like that.
yeah, yeah. And I think, you said something very interesting about seeing that actually at the end of the training, part of you didn't feel that the people coming really developed fully that quality of being able to direct clients or whatever you want to call them in that way, in a consistent way. And
Yeah, and there's a few different things there. One of them is that the training was only 3 months, which is not long enough.
yeah,
Even though we amplified the practice and review opportunities. Um, Another thing is that people weren't necessarily doing this exact thing before they arrived. They were doing similar things. They were doing adjacent things. They were doing
mm,
related things. They were doing pieces of it. Um, Another thing is that I think I have a gift. I've been in situations where I was the mediant. Like I had hired a mediator. I was in the situation. Somebody else was mediating, and I've intervened to try to make it go better. So,
I mean, I've had that too. Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
So, and then there's a reason I'm teaching this. Like I'm trying to transmit this, the technique, and in some ways, the gift of like I've had an unusual background and collection of practices that I've learned and developed. So, and I think all that's good, that people are,
yeah. And I mean, the sense I'm getting from you is that you have really worked with yourself as well. Obviously, I don't know if that's true, but that's my assumption. Like there's a sense of in doing your practice and counseling, like private practice. I don't know if it was counseling or coaching, it doesn't matter so much. And also probably in your personal life, there's something about really noticing, okay, how do things fit together, like the NBC, the listening, but also integrating it really with the nervous system and the body, like the somatic kind of work, and really being willing to sit with your own experience as you are accompanying somebody as like the core. That's what I'm picking up. I don't know if I'm just making that up because that's what I'm doing, or if that's actually what you're doing.
I feel seen.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because like from the opposite end, I was working with a client one time and she was talking about what I considered to be, in the grand scheme of things, kind of some minor issues with her family, but they were very big for her. And then she turned to me and she said, I can just tell that you came from a family that was much more supportive and caring of you, and you probably didn't have to deal with this kind of thing. And my family was a royal mess and dealt with things that were, much worse in kind of, a conventional sense. But she perceived me as having a much better, much more stable
Mhm.
background than her own, which was
Yeah.
not true. So interesting. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it resonates. I think I'm often perceived that way, and I'm actually in this moment. I was wondering, having heard your story earlier about what you said about becoming a bit macho,
Mhm.
because in part, like your own emotions weren't okay, so that means in part, like you're not expressing them, not as forthcoming with them, and the sense that often that is associated with like calmness, being in kind of not in charge, can't think of the word, but kind of on top of things, something like that. And the sense that somehow that means that you're sorted, which is a very good image to convey, of course, but also often creates that kind of disconnection of like, that person's not like me. So, yeah, and I guess I'm saying this also because I'm resonating with it. Like, this is my experience, and this is part of how I have made sense of it. Whether it's fully true or not is another story. But yeah.
Thank you.
And also really for myself at least working on like seeing that pattern that it can be very hard for me to express in a way that's fully emotionally legible to other people, but really wanting for myself at least to work on doing that, being emotionally legible, because I'm aware now of how if I don't do that, there can be a sense of disconnection, or as if I'm putting myself above, even though that's not my personal experience or what I want to do. So yeah.
Interesting. I experienced you as so very legible, so I was kind of surprised to hear you say
Well,
that.
maybe that's the work I've put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Chad, I'm curious what's going on with you. I usually have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm appreciating watching the two of you interact. And there's something in the common threads that each of you are sharing between the two of you that also weave with me. And so there's something like what Kristen said to you, Jill. I could have if she said it to me, I would also say something like I feel seen. So I'm just I just feel with each of you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chad.
Mm.
It's always good to see you. Well, I think I've stayed on longer for this workshop than I have for others just because I'm enjoying the conversation. Um,
Yeah. And
and I
we have
want, go ahead.
an appointment, by the way, at my time, 6:20. So, but anyway, yeah.
You and I,
Yeah, you and I.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I went over and missed the beginning of the appointment, but luckily it's with you.
Yes, with me, so there's no harm, and I'm fully aware of why.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. So, why don't we wind up this call? Let me go take a bio break and then Kirsten, you and I can continue in
Sure.
our other meeting space. How's that?
Yes, for sure.
All right, thanks so
Enjoy
much.